Welcome back. Now, a BBC documentary this weekend follows a Sikh man who is performing an astonishing act of selfless service in one of the most dangerous parts of the world. Ravi Singh is a charity worker who for the past 2 years has been providing a lifeline to 400 Yazidi families in northern Iraq who've been forced from their homes in the war against so-called Islamic State. Let's just take a look at a clip from this documentary.
So I was watching the news with our family and friends, and we saw the Yazidis crossing, with whatever they could carry. It was a very, very sad sight. Behind them were ISIS. In front of them was like these unforgiving mountains of Sinjar.
As ISIS attacked their villages, 50,000 Yazidis were trapped on Mount Sinjar. And despite the risks involved, Ravi made it his mission to help. For the past 2 years, he's been making regular trips to deliver food to the surviving Yazidi community, who are now living in camps and abandoned villages across the region.
Well, I'm delighted to say Ravi Singh is here in the studio with me. Thank you so much for coming in. Just a short clip there from the documentary. So tell me just a little more about the people you helped and what you actually found and saw.
We've been working there with Khalsa Aid since 2014. It's shocking what the world doesn't know what's happening. I mean, I think a lot of people know about ISIS, but they don't know the real victims, especially the Yazidi women who have been rescued or freed or been bought back with cash payments, and what they've gone through. I think the Yazidi people, being the oldest religion in the region, became a target, being called devil worshippers, etc. And it's beyond genocide what's taken place against them.
You said the world doesn't know. Tell us a few of the things that you actually found out when you went, you saw, and you talked to them.
When you talk to the women in refugee camps in northern Iraq, in the Kurdish region, where they feel safe at the moment when they're rescued, almost every woman, every girl will tell you how they were raped. First, how they were abducted in 2014, how they were raped, how they were sold, how they were beaten, how their children were killed in some cases, and how they had no hope. And in many cases, these are what stories I directly heard, that they prayed that the next bomb would fall on them to put them out their misery when they were held captive by ISIS. That's the sort of suffering they've gone through.
And I suppose trying to help, given what you've just described that they have gone through, they must be instantly suspicious of anyone from outside coming in purporting to help.
Especially somebody outside with a turban and a beard, because they're escaping people from turbans and beards. So we had to win their trust. And it's a mutual respect now after 2 years. It was quite a nervous time when you go into a new camp, how somebody's going to perceive me as a Sikh aid worker with a turban and beard. Only 25 kilometers away, you know, you got people who have the same sort of look, and they're doing all sorts of
And what would you say to them then?
A lot of youngsters follow on social media. They know what's going on. They call me like an Indian guy or the Indian English guy, and they would explain to the camp. And then most of the camp would turn around saying, okay, welcome, thank you for helping the elders. There'll always be one or two suspicious people that you have to be careful.
And you said that you'd started doing this in 2014, so you must now have built up the trust as you go back and back. And what is the help they most need now?
I think they need acknowledgement, first of all, and hope. And acknowledgement is that people to know who they are, what they've gone through, which they feel not many people are addressing around the world, especially superpowers, and hope that they can return to their homes as a safe haven, protected, but they don't feel that. They don't feel they can return home and it won't happen again.
And of course there were thousands that were initially taken, there were thousands that flee. How many is it thought that IS still hold?
The local knowledge in the camps and the elders is that 3,000 girls are still held. They were in Mosul, which have been, some of them moved now to Raqqa, and some of their relatives who have escaped tell the stories that so-and-so girl is in Raqqa. So as the villages are being freed around Mosul and the little towns, they're escaping rescue, but still around about 3,000 remain in ISIS hands.
And of course, I mentioned about them talking to you and perhaps initial reluctance, but given what you just said about so many of their loved ones still being held, they will be desperately anxious that anything that they say to the outside world could still impact on those being held.
Yeah, a lot of the ones that still have relatives behind, or there's a lady who's got 3 kids now. She escaped the last 2 children, and she's now pining for a 13-year-old daughter still held. But we will not show her face, so we won't take the responsibility of putting that kid in jeopardy by showing the face.
And you were back in Mosul, I think, only a few weeks ago before this launch of this offensive, an incredibly dangerous place to go in the world at the moment. I mean, what draws you to do this sort of work in the first place?
I think humanity is one thing that's missing nowadays. We talk about how our faith inspires us to do a lot more in every faith. But I see a lot of people who claim to be religious but not spiritual. And once you discover spirituality as human beings, you will feel their pain. You don't see the danger, you see the suffering. So your mind blocks it off.
And how much is your faith integral to this? Because, of course, this week Sikhs have been celebrating the 500th anniversary of the founder. And, of course, the bedrock of that is selfless actions. How core to all of what you're doing is your faith?
Extremely. My faith tells me, you know, every day we pray twice that we want well-being of all man, all humankind, all humanity. So, you know, if we pray for that, yet we see the suffering, we do nothing, we're not doing justice to who we are. So what Guru Nanak's teaching is Sarbat Dapala, which means well-being of all. My faith tells me that. So I can't sit back and say, well, we can't do this because it's too dangerous. This is who we are. We stand up for the reason that we should be out there doing something.
Well, you could never be accused of sitting back. Ravi Singh, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
And talking to us on today's programme. And just a reminder, you can see that full documentary, The Selfless Sikh, Faith on the Front Line, this Saturday on the 19th of November on BBC World News at 12:30 GMT.